Joining me right now is the Washington Examiner's chief political correspondent, Fox News contributor Byron York is here. Byron, great to have you. It's unclear to me where this stands. So the IRS now says it wants to hire 30,000 new people. They still have the $80 billion. Were the Republicans not successful in stopping that money?
No, they weren't, and they couldn't be. As the chairman explained, I mean, it's been passed into law, and you can't repeal it unless you pass another law, and Democrats control the Senate. So that's just not going to happen. What's interesting now is that this new report shows what everybody knew at the time, which is this is way more money, $80 billion, than the IRS even knows what to do with. There were experts at the time who said maybe a third of that would be necessary to upgrade and modernize the IRS, but that's 3 times more money than they needed. So right now, there are a lot of open questions after this so-called plan is released. One of which, by the way, is how they're really going to stay away from Americans reporting income less than $400,000. Is that really going to happen? Republicans are quite suspicious about that.
Yeah, and Byron, remember the reports about a month or so ago that there was conversation within the IRS that they wanted to go after people's tips, right? You got waitresses and waiters making all these tips, and maybe they're not recording, and maybe they're evading taxes on those tips. That's a below $400,000 job, isn't it?
Absolutely. Look, this is the long-held truth of taxes, which is that there just aren't enough rich people to soak to clear the deficit that exists today. You have to go after the enormous middle class to get that money, and that's where the IRS is probably going to end up.
Oh, God. Ramp it up. We got to get ready for this one. Okay, let's talk about the indictment of Trump. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan has subpoenaed former New York prosecutor Mark Pomerantz on his role in the former president's indictment. Alvin Bragg responded to Jordan's subpoena on Twitter, writing this: the House GOP continues to attempt to undermine an active investigation and ongoing New York criminal case with an unprecedented campaign of harassment and intimidation. Meanwhile, Judge Juan Merchan, who is overseeing Trump's case, reportedly donated $15 to President Biden's 2020 campaign. Byron, and we also see a report that the judge's daughter worked for Kamala Harris's campaign. Is there bias here on the part of the judge that we know of? Is there a conflict?
Well, it appears, although, you know, $15, that's not a big money campaign. Now, Jim Jordan has been making the case since the beginning that the House has the right to investigate this investigation because the House appropriates money for local law enforcement, some of which was certainly used in this. And perhaps even more importantly, Bragg is alleging some sort of violation of federal law as part of his effort to turn a misdemeanor into a felony. I think it's no accident that Jim Jordan decided that Mark Pomerantz would get the first subpoena, and Alvin Bragg would, react sort of emotionally. But Mark Pomerantz wrote a book about this case and about his work on this case at the prosecutor's office. One of the reasons Jordan focused on that is the January 6th committee faced potential witnesses who had written books. Mark Meadows and Peter Navarro wrote books about their experience with Trump and then refused to testify. So the committee referred both of them to the Justice Department, and the Justice Department is actually prosecuting Navarro. So there's not a lot of ground to stand on when you've written a book about something and then you refuse to go to Congress to talk about it.
Yeah, that's a great point, really, Byron. All right, let's talk about this two applications of the law, two systems of justice. Fox News Digital is reporting that longtime Hunter Biden associate James Bulger, the nephew of the mobster Whitey Bulger, visited the White House during the summer of 2016. He met with a former Hunter assistant turned staffer for then Vice President Biden between 2015 and 16. Bulger emailed Hunter and Devin Archer, another partner, multiple articles about various business deals in China. And now, right now, in New York, Hunter Biden's artwork is being displayed at a New York City exhibit in Soho. They're asking $85,000 for each piece that Hunter worked on. As you can see, there's some of the art. Byron, all of this just a couple of weeks after we got the bank records from James Comer's office, where we actually saw evidence in the bank records that Rob Walker received a $3 million wire from China. And then the next day, he wired $1+ million to Biden family members. We don't hear anything from the DOJ on this or the Manhattan DA on that.
No, you don't. And Hunter Biden benefits from secrecy in the art world. If somebody does buy his paintings at inflated prices, we won't really know about it. And it is a way, and I think even nonpartisan ethics people have suggested that anonymous purchases of art could be one way that outside influences exercise influence in the administration. And, you know, as far as the James Bulger stuff is concerned, it's yet another example of access to the White House during the Obama years when Joe Biden was vice president and Hunter Biden's business partners somehow found their way into the White House quite frequently.
Yeah. You know what, Byron, though, I'm wondering if it's even more sinister than that. I want to know what China was paying for. Okay, I don't think it was just paying for some time in the White House. I mean, I suspect that what the CCP wanted was entree into American business. Maybe deals that CFIUS was looking at. Maybe get a foothold in the energy business. You know, get the White House's okay on some of this deal making so that China can buy up farmland. I mean, I doubt, you know, it's just that, oh, we want to be sitting in the vice president's office. What did they get?
No, you're absolutely right. This sort of generosity comes with an expectation of something. These are business transactions. And the answer is we don't really know right now, which is why we have one House of Congress, at least, investigating this and the other House resisting it.
Byron, thank you. Byron York, Washington Examiner this morning.
Thank you,
Stay with us. We'll be right back.